Good morning and welcome to our May Dementia Dialogue entitled Let's Go, where we're taking a deeper look into engaging a person with dementia in activities. My name is Heather Mulder. I'm the Outreach Program Manager here at Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and I'm also going to be your moderator today. Throughout 2018, we have been taking a more in-depth look in really kind of pertinent topics for caregivers of people with dementia, and we've been kind of in this pursuit of answers where we've been posing a different question and diving a little bit deeper to learn more about it. And so today's question that we're going to be looking at is, how do I get my person involved in activities when they have trouble initiating? And I think this is a really challenging issue for a lot of caregivers, and so we've brought in some experts today. Who better to know about how to get someone with dementia involved in activities than people who have to do it all day long. And so we went to our local adult day center, Oakwood Creative Care, and we have Tara Krantzman and Jessica Major joining us today. Tara Krantzman is the Director of Programs and Operations for Oakwood Creative Care. Tara has been with Oakwood since May of 2012. She has a tremendous passion and expertise in human services, nonprofit organizations, and philanthropy. She oversees day-to-day operations and provides oversight in the development of the program. Tara has worked with nonprofit organizations centered on human services, advocating for awareness, education, health services, and enriching the lives of others. Tara has a master's degree in healthcare innovation from Arizona State University. Welcome, Tara. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And our second expert today is going to be Jessica Major. Jessica is an Arizona transplant from Utah looking for the sun. Dealing with memory impairment is difficult. She has enjoyed mastering ways to engage and lift those going through this difficulty. With a background in alternative healing and energy work, she has found a place at Oakwood Creative Care to utilize her love of research, teaching, music, and spreading joy. She's always looking for creative new ways to engage the members with new experiences, present mindfulness, and finding old memories. Thank you for joining us, Jessica.
Of course.
So I think let's just go ahead and jump right into this topic. And I mentioned already, I think caregivers are often surprised to learn about initiation as being something that is an issue for a person with dementia. A lot of times people will come to our clinic and they'll say, well, my person doesn't want to do anything anymore. They just want to sit and watch TV. So could you kind of explain what is the trouble with initiation?
Well, I think one of the aspects of initiation that I think we really need to recognize is what's happening with the executive center in the brain. So in order to initiate, somebody really has to be able to plan, organize, problem solve, and complete complex activities. And because of their dementia, they're having a hard time doing some of those things. And so while it seems like they're less engaged, they're sitting alone, isolated, they're showing less interest in the things that they once really loved, the problem is it takes so much to put all of those things together. And because that executive center is impaired, we're not seeing them initiate as much as you might have seen in your loved one before their diagnosis.
Right.
And sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say sometimes it even so flustered and frustrated by it that it can come out in aggression. So you might be trying to help them initiate and they can respond really negatively. And that's not because they don't necessarily want to do it. It's probably more because they're flustered and frustrated because their abilities have changed and their brain can't handle that much information.
Mm-hmm. And I think we see initiation as it applies to not just, the activities of spending time with family, going hiking, or, participating in the hobbies that somebody once loved, but also in just their day-to-day activities and self-care. It's common that they become more reluctant in bathing, and other aspects of grooming because of all of the decisions that have to be made to complete that task.
Mm-hmm. I think you bring up a great point, talking about the area of executive function and how complicated the thought process is around just even doing these very familiar activities.
Yeah, even something as simple as brushing your teeth, right? There's so many steps that go into brushing your teeth. It's finding the toothbrush, finding the toothpaste, uncapping the toothpaste, putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush, all of those things that we are so used to doing on a daily basis are now things that are becoming quite challenging, and the ability to organize those steps and plan are becoming harder.
Mm-hmm. Right, so not only can the person have trouble even knowing what the first step is and all of the pieces that go into it, but they can also have trouble as the activity goes on knowing what is the next step.
Yeah, yep.
I think also executive function is important to bring up because often we focus on memory as being the big change that people with Alzheimer's face, and it is a disease that touches every area of thinking, not just memory.
Yep, I agree, absolutely.
So now that we know a little bit more about initiation and why a person with dementia is going to have a little trouble with it, let's move on to talk about how should the stage be set? How do we get someone to get involved into activities? What do you guys do when you're working with some of your members and trying to engage them in activities?
Well, I think one of the first things we like to do is we like to get to know our members. So that's usually really simple for a caretaker who is a loved one that's going through this process. Kind of meeting them where they are. So if they are interested in a hobby, then that's a good place for us to maybe do some research and to find out more about that hobby. The more I know about something that somebody is interested in, the easier it's going to be for me to break down that activity into small pieces that I can then help them go through. So for example, if somebody came in who really enjoyed gardening, I can't be like, we're just going to plant something today. I would need to break that down into much smaller steps where I might have to go with them to the store. We could look at a few flowers, and they could pick out a few things. We might be starting from seeds. You have to make a lot of decisions before you even engage them at all. And then you would break it down. I wouldn't pull necessarily everything out for that activity all at once, because that can get really overwhelming because there's so many decisions inside of that. I would start by bringing out a pot and maybe some soil, and we'd fill up the pot. And then we might bring in some of our flowers and fill them in one at a time. It's about breaking things down and about kind of meeting them where they are. That's a really good place to start.
And I think it's important to also assess kind of your environment and make sure you're eliminating additional factors that might be disrupting to the activity that it is that you're trying to facilitate. Is there too much noise going on in the background? Is the news on? Do you have landscapers outside? Are they using a lot of tools that are impacting the quietness of the atmosphere? Do you have young children in the room? Are they playing? I mean, all of those things are important to recognize, because it's hard for them to engage in something when there's so many different things that can overstimulate them.
Absolutely. I see that even in cognitive classes that I'm teaching with. We have these big, beautiful windows that just let in so much light, but it also means that there's a lot of distractions outside. So people will start pointing at a bird that I wouldn't have even noticed because I'm focused on the task that I'm doing, but that's all that they see is they see this flutter out of the corner of their eye, and that becomes the new most important thing in the room. So eliminating distractions is going to be invaluable.
Mm-hmm. And Jessica, I love how you said keep decisions small. We often stress the importance of pre-planning and getting everything that you need right there, because once you start your momentum into an activity, you don't want to break that momentum by going to have get a supply that you forgot. But I appreciate the importance of keeping things manageable.
Right. Well, and I think that's actually that brings up a good point. It can be kind of stressful to try to get everything set in place, especially if you're trying to facilitate something at home. So even giving yourself time to go and get the next step is going to be easier for you in the long run. But the way that they view time is very different. They're not going to be overly frustrated or anxious because you step away to go get the next thing. So I think that sometimes it's easy to feel like, oh, we have to have everything in the right place right before we get started. But really, that's a big part of the process, is that we can kind of work together. It's like, okay, now just hold on a second. I need to go grab the paint. And then I'm going to, like, if we're doing a paint project, right, then I'm going to go grab the paint after we've set up our station, right, with just whatever, if you're using a paper or easel or something, I'm going to go get the paint. Some people might be able to choose a color. You can ask them, and they'll choose whatever color they want. Some people, you have to show them 2 or 3 colors, just because they get overwhelmed with every choice. And a lot of them can't even think of a color. If I say, hey, what's your favorite color, they're not even going to be able to tell me. But if I say, hey, do you want blue or green, they'll be able to tell me what color they prefer.
So be really mindful about how you're phrasing things.
Absolutely.
And I love to don't hold them to our timeline.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we focus, like for your example that you gave a couple minutes ago about someone who loves to garden. We can get so focused on the end product, which is getting the garden in, but now you've missed the potential of so many great interactions and activities in going to pick out the seeds and the flowers and, picking out the proper soil. So I appreciate that. Don't hold them to our specific timeline.
Right, absolutely.
So once we have the stage set, do you guys have some basic rules of thumb that you could use to help get a person with dementia involved in activities?
Well, I think the number one thing that we always look for and is really important in what we do from day to day is just to be aware of our own energy and our own body language, because that speaks volumes to the people that we're interacting with. And so if we're really upbeat and energetic and really positive, they will feed off of that, and they'll be excited to be a part of whatever it is that you're presenting. And so energy is kind of a hot word that we use here at Oakwood, because it's so contagious. So if you're down, then they won't be as likely to want to be part of whatever it is that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's, probably one of our number one.
Sorry, my computer just went dark.
It's one of our number one focuses. We if I go up and I'm really excited, and especially if sometimes I make it almost sound like a favor they're doing me, especially if you have a good repertoire with somebody. If I make it sound like they're helping me out by doing this with me, then they're a lot more likely to join me and to help me. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better and more comfortable if you're there supporting me, even if I'm just teaching like a history class or something. Then I can get people in that way. Or we have a member here who her son always wants her to paint, and she's really not wanted to lately. But one way that we can get her to paint is we say, oh, your son Bruce, he really wants you to paint for him. He's been waiting and waiting for your new paint project. And because she loves her son so much, she's more likely to do that.
And I think that ties into finding out what each person's individual sense of motivation is. Everybody has some form of internal motivator, and I think it's digging deep to figure out what that is. And for this particular person that Jessica's describing, her internal motivator is her son. For somebody else, it could be getting dressed and taking a shower and putting on a nice outfit so that a wife can go out to dinner with her husband. And so it's just kind of understanding those things that are more meaningful to that person.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Another example I thought of, we have a sweet lady here who's really struggling even getting up. She doesn't want to get up out of her chair. That's something we really see pretty straight across the board. That tends to be something that comes up inside of dementia. And one thing that I've started to do, again, it's all about my energy. Whatever I bring to the table, she's going to match it. So we're going to go. And she wants to go, but she's kind of lost a little bit about getting up. So she kind of starts moving forward. She doesn't quite make it. So I'll maybe dance a little. I'll have her move her hips, and she'll kind of focus on something different than just standing up and using her legs. I can even tell her to use her legs, and she might not understand how to do that. So kind of playing with them is a really good way to help motivate them, make it more of a game, make it really fun. If we approach them with frustration because they're not doing what we want, then they are going to close their walls and they're just going to dig in their feet and they're not going to do anything. But if I can go into it just over and over again, just being really excited and really happy, maybe step away for a little bit and try again, then I'm more likely to succeed. But it's always, I have to ever be optimistic.
Mm-hmm. I love that you were talking about what is someone's sense of motivation. Can you explain how do you find what their motivation is?
Well, for us, it's a lot of questions that come with their family caregiver and kind of trial and error. And sometimes it takes time to be able to figure out what those things are, but we work really hard to just get to know the person and understand their life story. And when I say life story, I'm talking about the things that they're most proud of, whether it be their children, their career, things that they've volunteered in their past. And sometimes that information is forthcoming from the person themselves, and other times we have to utilize the support from their families to be able to get that information as well.
Mm-hmm. A big part of that is making sure that they kind of have a purpose or almost a job at home. When you get your diagnosis, you lose so much. So if they become like in charge of the plants and they're in charge of watering the plants, and they know that, and that's something kind of they can count on. Or we have several members here who they came in and they've become artists, and they don't really have to think about what class they're going to. They're going to go to the art room because they are now artists, right? Mm-hmm. If we can kind of help them find an identity, then that tends to be a really strong motivator. Or we have a few ladies here who help with the laundry. Giving them a role helps that they're less likely to fight their new role if we help them find one.
And the other thing to add to that point too is, even though we're talking about how people with dementia are showing signs of losing initiation, it's really important to also recognize that it's a basic human need for people to still want to feel needed and to have the ability to contribute. And so it just might look a little different, and it might need a little bit of support and extra guidance from those surrounding them, but those feelings never go away. And I think that's one thing that we really thrive on here is recognizing that that those are needs that are still very much present.
Yeah.
Hmm. Not just doing an activity for the sake of doing an activity, having an actual purpose to it or a reason for doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
So are there different strategies that you use for the different types of activities? Like, for example, if you're trying to do a personal care activity versus, say, an art project, would you use different strategies?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's, depending on the situation, it might be that we're, physically or verbally demonstrating whatever it is that we're trying to, encourage them to participate in. We really zone in on utilizing our senses, right? So we might offer visual cues, introducing items that might stimulate some interest and desire to engage in something. We might demonstrate through like pointing or kind of touching things. And we'll ask questions, break things down one step at a time. Sometimes it's even giving hand-over-hand support. So if somebody were painting a canvas and they weren't quite sure how to hold the paintbrush and put the paint on a canvas, we might go and take our hand and put it over theirs and help, teach them how to do the strokes of a paintbrush, and that is helpful for them.
Mm-hmm. So what about if we want them to engage in an activity that we know they're not looking forward to? I know a lot of times personal care activities can become challenging, or I would imagine sometimes even going to an adult day center is met with resistance by the person. And so what strategies do you use if you know the person's going to resist?
Well, I think it goes back to, those two key concepts that we talked about earlier. One, finding what their internal motivator is, and two, using the power of energy to kind of persuade them and change that attitude a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I can think we had a sweet member here that her husband couldn't help her bathe at home, so we were helping here. And after several months, she was starting to resist that here, which is problematic because she needs to take care of herself. So using her personal motivation, she and I had a really strong friendship, and she was willing to do a lot of things just because her husband and I were asking her to. But because I knew that, and the way I talked to her was absolutely in love. I'm doing this because this is important, because I love you and we want to make sure that you're taken care of. And that ended up being a really strong motivator for her. We would still see some resistance, but she would do it because of her love for me and her love for her husband. Or someone who might not want to paint. Maybe I just need to put that in front of them, right, and show them what it is. And they might, just because it's in front of them, they might be more likely to do it. Maybe trying to get somebody to come to a day center. Most people will do a lot for their loved ones, and if you can be very candid with people with dementia, and you can let them know that you need a minute, and that you'll be back, and that you trust these people. And again, it's all about what you bring, though, right? So if you're excited about this, then they're going to be more excited. They tend to match energy. Mm-hmm. So I think Tara really hit it, that the energy you give and then using their motivators, that we see it work time and time again.
And I think a couple of other things to that point is, one, for depending on the person, it might be that you're not really asking them, but you're just kind of in the process of acting out that activity. So if you were trying to get your loved one into the shower and you knew that they resisted showers, and maybe you weren't in a place that you could have those loving conversations with that person, you might just kind of jump both feet in the water and turn on the shower, or let them know that they've spilled something on their shirt and you'd like to help them get cleaned up. So you're not really giving them too much of a advanced notice, because that can often be very daunting to a person, right, who's already said that they don't like that particular thing. But you just kind of embrace those moments as they happen.
Right. We'll also rename things that they don't want to do.
Oh, that's a good point.
So like the lady that didn't want to shower, it was a spa event, so she was getting all dolled up. Or we've had a lot of members that come here. This is their club. It's a day club, and they are members of a club. So renaming things to make it sound more appealing is also a really handy tool.
Definitely. I did notice that you call all of your participants members, and I think that's probably a softer way to explain their relation.
Right.
So all really good strategies. What about now if we get to the point as a caregiver if activities just become overwhelming. Often it seems like when someone progresses to the moderate stage, now we have physical care, we're managing the finances, and now we need to fill their day with meaning and purpose, and it can just sometimes push people to overload. What options are there out there if this is starting to become the case?
Well, the number one thing is of course acknowledging that you need help and being in a place where you can accept that help. There's lots of great resources out in the community, anywhere from day programs like ours. We've got programs in the East Valley. There's programs in the West Valley. And so being able to kind of put that in the hands of people who, provide those services all day long, and that's what they do is activity engagement is huge for the caregiver. And I think sometimes caregivers feel guilty about giving that up. And I don't think they should. I think that they should embrace the fact that there are places where their loved one can still engage and socialize with other people and still have that human need met while they're receiving some time for themselves. You also have, the option of home care services where caregivers can come in anywhere from an hour at a time to even, some places do 24 hours at a time. But that caregiver can spend some one-on-one time with your loved one, whether it be playing cards, reminiscing, maybe taking them for a walk or going to the store. And they can help with some of those other activities of daily living that are really challenging for caregivers, like dressing and taking a shower, and even some of those light housekeeping chores, making the bed and doing laundry and things like that.
I think all really fantastic resources. I think we got a lot of gems from both of you today. I really appreciate your time with us this morning. I think some of the big take-homes that I got from both of you was first the reminder that Alzheimer's and dementias are not just a disease of memory, that they impact every area of thinking, making even participating in overlearned activities sometimes very complicated. You reiterated the point of how activities are complex, and so maybe breaking them down into smaller pieces, and also keeping the decisions smaller for the person with dementia, not overwhelming them with the entire picture at once, but giving them small pieces of it. Also the reminder that we can't hold them to our timeline. Let's just kind of take our time and relax into this and enjoy the moment with our person. I loved the being aware of your energy. I think is such a nice way to put it. How are you approaching this activity, and the fact that energy is contagious? You also talked about what is their internal motivator. I think that can be really powerful in helping to engage people with dementia as well. So thank you so much, Tara and Jessica, for joining us for our discussion this morning.
Thank you for having us.
I want to invite all of our participants to join us next month as we again look at activities where we're going to be addressing the question, how do I honor routine while incorporating variation in activities for my person? We often stress the importance of having a routine, but then we want to make sure that we're not so regimented that we're confined to that. And our expert next month is going to be Mary Leonard from the Giving Voice Initiative. So I'm sure another engaging discussion with her as well. I want to thank all of you for joining us this morning for our Dementia Dialogue. Please do use your voice to let us know what you thought about today's session. As soon as we close, you will be emailed an evaluation. We would appreciate if you would take just a couple minutes to fill that out and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you'd like to learn about in the future. A reminder, this session has been recorded today, so you can access it in about 48 hours after the close of today's session on our website. Thank you so much for attending Dementia Dialogues, where we bring the dementia education to you.